Hello there, we are coming to you live from Emara Ole Sereni, where ABSA Kenya Foundation and GIZ, which is a German government-owned agency, are here to just support the MSMEs within the circular economy. Remember, MSMEs obviously have a growing impact on economic outputs in emerging markets and frontier ones as well. And they are the main creators of jobs, particularly across Kenya and Africa. Remember, many of the jobs in Kenya, almost 80 to 90% are MSMEs. So therefore, the circular MSMEs within the circular economy, what you're talking about is reusing, recycling, and the program they're launching here is known as Circularising. It's not just elevating the space of the MSMEs within this particular industry. And joining me is Charles Wokabi, who is the head of sustainability at ABSA. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
No, thank you. Thank you for coming and being here with us today.
All right. So when you talk about Circularising program, what are we really talking about?
Yeah, so first of all, I think it's a really fabulous day for us at ABSA Kenya Foundation, together with our partners GIZ, as well as the Africa Guarantee Fund, and really a momentous occasion as we launch Circularising program. What is this program? It is an MSME-focused capacity building program that has three components. It has a component around targeted capacity building, around building access to finance, and helping SMEs. Thirdly is helping MSMEs inculcate sustainable business practice. Now, we call it Circularising because it's focused on specific businesses that are focused on either businesses that are doing mass production of waste or businesses that reuse waste to make products and propositions for customers in the market. And it's a program that will run for 2 years under the auspices of the ABSA Kenya Foundation, touching about 2,000 businesses, with specific impact targets around waste recycling. We have got a target of about recycling 6,000 tons of waste with these businesses within those 2 years, and effectively, improving job creation and creating new job opportunities. We do target about 1,000 new jobs, in the green space, and we will be looking to improve about 5,000, employment conditions within our country. Ultimately, this is a program that we think will impact indirectly well above 50,000 livelihoods in the country.
All right, thank you so much for that. Well explained. Now, Kenya is having, when you look at the conversation around MSMEs, financing and training, when it comes to youth and women-led, because today we are focusing on the youth and women-led MSMEs, what is this program going to improve in terms of how they access finance and how they get training in order to scale up their businesses?
Yeah, no, we really must recognize that SMEs and the MSME sector is really the engine of our economy. And when we see, numbers that come, from the authorities that say our GDP is growing 5% upwards, the real driver of this growth is really the SME and the MSME sector. And we really then have to ask ourselves, what is the role we can play as players, within the financial sector and the development sector? How can we join hands and make specific interventions that then help these SMEs and MSMEs thrive, grow faster and be enabled to improve their productivity, employ a lot more people? You'd know that this is a sector that creates above 80% of new jobs in this market, and there are very structured inhibitions that face this sector, and one of them is what you mentioned, is access to finance. And based on our experience as a bank, access to finance, yes, is a big gate that they have to go through and a big hurdle that they face, but the real hurdle actually sits on the non-financial support space, because it's the non-financial support that helps these SMEs and MSMEs build their capacity enough to become financially viable and commercially viable to the level that financial institutions then can consider them, viable ventures to continue investing in. And so this program straddles these two elements. It has got a big portion of non-financial support, where we will focus on capacity building, training, workshops, mentorship, and so far and so forth. And then at the end of it, then once we've taken these people through that pipeline, they become, ready to invest 2019, and the ABSA Kenya Foundation will be investing in some of the businesses. And from an ABSA Bank perspective, then we will be very happy to partner from our SME business unit to support these businesses that will have gone through the Circularising program, to give them now access to sustainable finance, because they already have built the muscle from the capacity building process. They've already have built the muscle, the understanding and the growth enough for them to receive funding. One of the biggest challenges that we found, and this is not us saying, it's actually from the research that we've done with SMEs, is a lot of SMEs end up breaking when they receive funding, because many times they haven't really thought through what they want to do with this money, and so when you receive money from either from a bank or from an investor, then if there isn't a clear plan or clear structures within the business, that money can sometimes even put you in bad debt, and it becomes a burden as opposed to support. And so we really have to work together, and that's why we've come together with the GIZ, with Africa Guarantee Fund, and many other partners to work on something that we think can provide holistic support for SMEs to continue growing.
Even as you speak about holistic support, let's look at circular economy and sustainability. Of course, these are terms we always hear, but now how do you make it practical for small businesses and that mama who has a very small SME in the village or somewhere? How do you make it practical? Because now these are very big terms, Yeah. So how do you just break it down for that small business?
Yeah. So in here, we just got a really good example of what you're talking about. A small business that deals in bananas, an SME that deals in bananas, and these are people who, yes, take banana, the fruit, and ripen and sell in the market, but they leave the whole plant of the banana, useless. And what that business has done is engineered and innovated around a way of drawing the fiber out of the banana stalks and using that fiber to make things like baskets. And they've even innovated further. Now they are making hair extensions from these things. So if you talk about circularize, we really are just saying, if your business produces waste today, that, as the word suggests, goes to waste. There may be an opportunity for you to look at that waste, and see opportunities of further transforming that waste into a product, and that has a dual benefit. It has the benefit of improving your financial performance for the business, but also the way we dispose some of the things that we deal with as an as an economy. That if you take a business that deals in plastics today, so that's fine. So you sell products to the market, maybe you sell them in plastic bottles, and that's the end of your business. And so when we come in with this program, then we empower you and we train you, and we help you to then say, how do I collect back my plastics and I can use them for something else? And there are many different companies owned by SMEs within this market that are doing fantastic things with things like transforming plastics into like poles that are used in things like fencing. And so that's really the conversation. There's another partner of ours that takes e-waste. So whatever happens to all the 5 phones that are in your house, that you stopped using 5 years ago, and they take them, they crush them, and they use that material to make something else. And so it's relatable to big businesses and yet also to small businesses. If you think about a carpenter out there and all the wood, waste material that they have, how can we use that to create products that are useful? If you think about a tailor that has got all these cuttings, that they cut from their pieces of clothes that they are using, to design attire for people. How do we take that? How do we work with them to take that waste, repurpose it, and make it something else that can continue being a business opportunity for them? And that handles a very big problem that we face in this city and that is faced across many cities of how you do waste management. So that's really the science behind it, and the aspiration is for us to work with 2,000 of businesses that are doing this type of that are doing work in this type of examples that I've given, and help them to just become that much better, that much more efficient, and while doing so, make better profits, grow their businesses, and much more importantly, provide employment opportunities for young Kenyans.
Right. Even as we conclude this particular conversation, let's look at women and young entrepreneurs who are frequently described as engines of growth, and yet they face clear barriers. Like we spoke earlier about financing and even accessing these opportunities. Now, how is ABSA thinking differently, and how are you going now to be joining together with the partners that you have in order for you to make this a reality, especially in terms of access to finance and also opportunities within the market for women-led and youth-led enterprises?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and you're right. Within the SME sector and MSME sector, there's a big part to be played by women and youth, and you're right in that affirmative action is required within this space by actors like ABSA Foundation, by GIZ, by Africa Guarantee Fund, and any other partners, that can come together with us in such an endeavor. What is the intervention required? I think the intervention is two-pronged. Number one is to really help youth, and women truly formalize their business, set up the right structures, to make them investment ready, and investment ready from whether it's a bank like ours, like ABSA that's going to invest in them, or a development fund, or an impact fund, or an investor coming from outside. How do we help them to really formalize and build the right structures, policies, and so far and so forth around their businesses, so that they can be business. And then on the other hand, we ask ourselves from a financial perspective, what are these hurdles that have existed against these demographics, and how can we work towards those? So, for example, at ABSA, we have a proposition that we call Women in Business. And Women in Business as a proposition was built out of this realization that, only less than 10% of title deeds in this market are registered to women, and yet land continues to be a very big piece of collateral, for any financial institution. And so we innovated around it to say, how do we work with women entrepreneurs to better understand their businesses from a data perspective, and that data allows us to make better analysis and clever, and get clever insights around their business, and that allows us to make, to take a chance on them, from an unsecured perspective, give them unsecured funding, and so there will be many interventions like this. Now, look. For-profit financial institutions will, at the end of the day, need to give a return to their shareholder, and that's the space, and that in itself, sometimes means that there are businesses that might be considered not ready, but that need to go through a process to make them ready, and that is where the ABSA Foundation is playing the role is in taking these businesses that are considered not ready, or that can, or with an opportunity for further development before they can become investable, and we take them through the process of getting them ready, with a specific focus, as you say, very correctly, to women, youth, people in the creative economy, people in the circular economy, people in sustainability, people responding to climate change challenges, so that we continually, are able to stand behind Kenyan entrepreneurs, all the men and women, and young people that are out there every day doing their best to make a living, that we can stand behind them, give them the right support, and enable them to grow their businesses. And that's how we will grow our country, because that's how you create more jobs, and that's how you bring more people into the financial inclusion.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, there you have it. We are speaking about the MSME field, also the circular economy, and at large also women and youth-led MSMEs right here. For me, it's back to you in studio.